Welcome everyone to the bullet section. Arjun currently leads the match 12-11 and 30 minutes of bullet c4 c6. We have the knight coming out and the Slough defense is on the board. Knight comes out to c3 and Arjun takes the pawn. Gukesh pushes his pawn to a4. Bishop f5. This is one of the main lines of the Slough defense, and f3 is a very sharp line because this entails the sacrifice of a piece, which we shall see now. Bishop takes e4, fe4, knight e4, and now you have to be careful about this check. So bishop d2, the queen comes in, both of them playing super fast. This is all well known theory. King takes, check, king c1, and now Arjun pauses a bit. b5 is a possible move and he plays it, defending his c4 pawn. If we count the number of pawns right now, white has a piece for black's 4 pawns. Knight comes out to d7, Gukesh takes it, Arjun takes it back, and rook comes to a3 and black castles. Now, are these pawns more dangerous or is the piece better is the question. Arjun thinking a bit. Look at Gukesh's time. He has 1 minute 12 seconds. It's clear that Arjun is a better bullet player here, but Gukesh is showing that he can play super fast. For now, the position is roundabout even, putting your bishop on e4 and then slowly trying to switch your rook, start pushing your kingside pawn. Seems like the right way to continue. He goes h5. Arjun pushes his pawn to h6 and g5. Gukesh taking a lot of risk here. Takes here. Now he has 5 pawns here, Arjun. But his king looks slightly weakened. The h file is open. g6 played. Now can you somehow manage to checkmate this king? Because if you play h7, king g7 or king h8, if you come in with a check, I have f6. Arjun taking the queen in his hand. He's thinking these pawns are going to soon start rolling down the board. Gukesh now pausing a bit and h7 played. King comes to h8, blocking the pawn. It's amazing how Arjun has all his pawns on the board still. None of them have been traded. Queen comes to c2. Now queen d4, nice move, nice centralizing move. It's pretty clear that the attack has gone nowhere and Arjun's position is much better, but Gukesh must continue playing, continue to create tricks, because that's what bullet is all about. Rook comes to g3, now attacking the g5 pawn. He pushes it forward. Now f5, e5, everything will start to roll. Gukesh down to 18 seconds, 17, 16. It's 2 seconds increment per move, so there is some increment there. You won't lose on time. Queen e2, attacking the pawn on g4. You can play f5 because taking this is too risky. The rook would come to e8, but instead he goes c3, rook takes g4 and queen d2. Now take the queen and the position is still fine. He takes it. Rook takes d2 and take on c3. No, he takes on c6. That's a big mistake. King a1 and b3, and these pawns are just too strong now. Rook c4 played, a check comes in, another check, king c1, and now there are many ways to win this position. He goes rook d8, very strong move. The rooks are very powerful. Gukesh down to 3 seconds. He moves his rook up but gets checkmated in one move, and Arjun takes 1 point here. He's now leading 13-11 here in the match. But it was a great try by Gukesh, trying to play fast. Let's see what the second game holds for us. We move on to second game of bullet. Arjun now leads the match 13-11. Gukesh needs to strike back. It's important. Arjun looking very calm, focused. He feels like a man who's in his terrain. Gukesh adjusts all his pieces. 1 minute plus 2 seconds increment here. Let's see how this goes. They shake hands and off we go. e4. c5, we have the Sicilian. Knight f3, knight c6, the pawn comes up, and we're going to see perhaps the Sveshnikov. Yes, Sveshnikov it is. d6, bishop g5, a6, knight a3, b5. The speed at which both the players are playing is immense. He castles, knight comes back to c2, and this is all well-known theory. Rook b8 played by Gukesh. You can put your bishop out, but h4 is also a very cool move. Gukesh goes g6, and now g3 played. The bishop drops back, and do you want to trade this bishop with bishop h3? No, he goes h5, trying to soften up the black king side. The knight in the center is well placed. Maybe you want to trade it with knight e7. Gukesh slowing down a bit. I think that's his strategy. Play very quickly in the opening, gain some time, and then start to think. Arjun takes. I guess you want to take back with the h pawn, maintaining the integrity of your pawn structure. He takes back, h takes g6. And Arjun plays the very calm move a3. Maybe he wants to go knight b4 next. That's the reason why he played this, so that after knight takes, he can take back with his a pawn, attacking the pawn on a6. Yes, he goes for knight b4. Very powerful move, because if you play rook c8 to defend this knight, then the a6 pawn is hanging. So suddenly Gukesh under some pressure. This move queen g5 did not really sit well with the position. What to do next is the question. Do you want to take here on b4 or not? 32 seconds for Gukesh. He goes rook c8, but now the a6 pawn is hanging. After that, the b5 pawn would also be hanging. Gukesh would have to do something in the center because the white king is still on e1. But queen d2, very calm, cool move, practical move by Arjun, wanting to trade the queens. Also, that would weaken the e7 square. Take. Now be careful, Gukesh, because takes, there is knight e7 and you will lose this. So maybe bishop d5 seems like the best move, but already this position does feel a bit dangerous. Look at Gukesh coming down to a last 7 seconds. 6, knight takes, and rook e8 played, but the knight is completely dominant. Now attacking the rook here. Rook comes to d8, and he jumps in to c7 and chops off the pawn on a6. How can Gukesh fight back? He has just 6 seconds. He opens the center. Rook takes, but the white king will safely be placed on c2. He goes to e2, and now can we start pushing the pawn? Yes, he does. Black still in with some chances. Rook d1, very powerful move, trying to trade off pieces. Rook g5 played. Gukesh just has 5 seconds. Very difficult position here to play. Arjun has 24 seconds and also an extra pawn. He goes bishop d7. Now knight d4 check would have been such a good move, but knight e5 he takes here. Of course, with such little time, it's very difficult to think. Check comes in, king g7, and now the other rook joins in, threatening a checkmate, and he resigns here. Gukesh loses the second bullet game. Arjun takes the lead 14-11. Wow, what a game that was by Arjun. Almost flawless there. Gukesh had one chance, but he did not find it. Let's go to the third game. With a 3-point lead in the match, Arjun is looking very relaxed, but Gukesh still has his chances because we will be playing at least 4 bullet games. We have the Sicilian now on the board. Knight comes out to f6, knight c3, knight c6 played, and a3 here. Gukesh needs to be focused. This is a key and a crucial game for him to come back. The score is right now 14-11 in the favor of Arjun Erigaisi. Knight takes on d5, and now knight takes d5 is possible. Knight takes c6 is also possible, but Gukesh pauses a bit. He's trying to recollect the theory here. He takes on c6, pawn takes back, and now knight e4. So white seems to have gotten a small edge out of the opening because of the better pawn structure, but now f5 would be possible just to kick the knight from the center, but bishop a6 played. Now if you take here, I want to simply give a check and take it back. So he castles, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3 is on the board. And Arjun now planning to also castle. No, he first goes knight f6, offering a queen trade. For Gukesh, there's also a pressure of playing for the match because the position is equal. He can exchange the queens, he can exchange the knights and then play calmly. But on the other hand, he wants to play for a win as well. Takes, and maybe now keeping the queens on the board with queen e2. It's not such a bad idea. He goes queen e2. He was going to go to f3, but then decided against it. Castles, pawn to c3, just limiting this bishop. You have the queen side majority. The c6 pawn is slightly weak. Bishop e3, attacking the queen now. Queen comes to b5. Arjun offers the queen trade, but Gukesh refuses it. He wants to play b4, followed by c4 or a4. Rook b8 played, and now b4 is on the board. Now a7 pawn is hanging, so he goes a5. I do feel that Gukesh's position has good potential. Here also he can go rook b1 or c4 or bishop c5. He goes bishop c5. Rook comes to the center. He pushes the queen away. Queen goes back. He has 12 seconds on the clock. Take. White has made some progress, but a beautiful move by Arjun, offering the trade of bishops. Now the b4 pawn would be weak. He takes. And Arjun thinking a bit whether he should exchange the rooks first. No, he goes queen e7. Now rook takes d8, and rook b1. Seems like a normal move. He goes queen a4, indirectly defending b4 because there's tactics here on the d8 square. Like if you take queen takes b4, I can first take the rook and then your queen would be hanging. So Arjun thinks a bit. He has 5 seconds. Gukesh has 6 seconds. He takes on c6. Queen takes b4 played. Is the c pawn a strength or a weakness? h3 played. The queen comes back. Arjun is happy with the draw. He has a 3-point lead. Gukesh needs to keep trying. This is hanging. Rook b1 played. Queen c6, a queen trade, and then rook b4 would be better, but he comes back and Arjun's like, oh, that's a free pawn. He chops it off, and Gukesh is quite unhappy there because now he has to defend. Quite a difficult endgame here, being pawned down. He now takes the queen, pawn takes. The sad part about this format is that it's 30 minutes of bullet. You can see the timer there next to the players, and Gukesh has to spend time defending this endgame, and Arjun's not going to give him easy because he has the lead in the match. So he's just going to waste some time here playing this endgame. Rook a5 played, and now in comes a check. King d3, h5 played, and Gukesh is in quite a bit of trouble. King d7, check. Rook goes back to c7. He comes up. King d6, check. King d3, and the pawn comes up to g6. He pushes his pawn. This position is difficult now. Actually, black is pressing quite hard. King e5 should be a good move. He comes back, maybe not the best. Attacks the pawn. Exchanges happen. King comes to e6. He's waiting on the 7th rank. Now a check threatened, so that these pawns are attacked. He goes back. King e2, rook a3, King f2, pawn pushes forward. The rook goes back. This is great defense here by Gukesh, and Arjun, of course, trying very hard. Oops, the rook falls. He gives a check. King f7, puts his rook behind the pawn. Still a draw. You have to play it carefully. Check. King f2. Gukesh is doing it well. Arjun trying to come from the other side now. King f6. Check. King g2 played. And now the rook moves forward. Maybe you start pushing the pawn. Not yet. Check. King goes back. Gukesh has got a very tight defensive formation. King f4. But Arjun's trying. He's cut the king off now. Is this going to be dangerous? h5. Good move played by Gukesh. Simplifying the position. If you take on g3, I'll take on d4. So king f7. And he comes back to e4. Takes the pawn. Have to be careful here. With what do you take? He takes with the king. Good move. h4. And rook goes back attacking the pawn. h3. King comes in. The king attacks the rook. And maybe now Gukesh can also attack the black rook. He's down to 3 seconds. Oof. Plays king f4. And now the rook stays in there. King g4. And finally the pawn is lost and the game ends in a draw. Arjun keeps his lead and they have to go into the final 3 games of the bullet. Gukesh needs to win all of them. Look at how quickly he's rearranging his pieces. He wants to make sure that he gets maximum games here so that he has chances to win here. The score stands 14.5, 11.5 in the favor of Arjun. Gukesh in a must-win scenario here. Now adjusts his pieces. He has the black pieces. He needs to strike back. He did it in the blitz section. Can he do it in the bullet? A shake of hands and off we go. d4 by Arjun, knight f6, and we have the London system. Gukesh thinks for a bit, calms down, pushes his pawn and brings his bishop out. He trades it. Queen takes. Have to be careful for check here. e6. He's okay with giving up that pawn, but Arjun doesn't go for it. Knight d7. Castles. And now pawn pushes forward to c5. c3 played. The bishop comes out. The knight develops. You castle. Pawn to h3. h6. See both the players moving very quickly out of the opening. They just have a playable position here which is equal in nature. But e4, slightly dubious decision here by Arjun, because now he's going to be left with an isolated pawn. He can push his pawn forward, but then he's a bit worried about knight h5 move. So he takes, knight takes, queen takes, and now knight f6. But the b7 pawn is hanging, so you have to be careful here. Gukesh thinks for a bit about what needs to be done here. He plays his pawn to b5. d5 would have been a nice move here, but knight f6 hits the queen as well as the pawn, so it's not possible here. He goes bishop e5. Let's see how Gukesh continues. He may want to put his knight on the d5 square. That's exactly what he does. And Arjun brings the rook, threatening bishop c7, but the knight sits in. Now, black has a good position here. Just what Gukesh needed in this must-win game. Knight d2 played. Slowly, he can start putting pressure. Rook c8 is a good move. Bishop g5 played. Queen g4. The idea could be h4, putting pressure down to the g7 pawn. He goes queen d7, and now h4, bishop f6, and knight e4 could be a nice way to continue as white. But he goes queen g3, and Gukesh pushes the bishop away with f6. There's pressure down here. You can't go back, so you have to go to c7 or d6. In fact, d6 much better. Then you can put your bishop here, but he goes to c7. That's not a good move because rook can come in now. He goes rook c8, and if you move the bishop, I can take and pick up the knight. So maybe you have to go to a5. He does it, but with a5, take, rook takes, b4, suddenly the knight is hanging. It's pinned here. The bishop's path is blocked. The bishop could also get trapped. Arjun Erigaisi in big trouble here. Queen d3 played. But now just queen b5 would be very solid. He goes queen a4, which is also strong, attacking the bishop and the pawn. Arjun is almost lost here. He loses the exchange. He takes the pawn, threatening to take on e6. Maybe knight f4 is just winning completely here. But Gukesh thinks for a bit. He has enough time. He comes back queen d7. Arjun takes back the exchange, but Gukesh is still completely winning. Queen f1 played. Now can you come in with the queen inside in the position? Yes, he does. Gukesh does feel a little bit underconfident after having lost couple of games in bullet, but this one is for him to win. He would then narrow down the score to just 2 points difference. Queen takes d4 is hanging. He can take the queen as well, but he takes the pawn. Queen e1, attacking the pawn on e6. He goes knight f4, good move. And now he goes a3 at just 2 seconds on the clock. Queen e3, play queen d1 and knight e2 to try and checkmate, but he exchanges the queen. And now this position is not that trivial to win, because there are 2 pawns which are passed here. Bishop c3, he comes rook c5, knight b4. This is not easy. Gukesh has to start making his kingside pawns to roll. And Arjun is so good. He's just not letting Gukesh exchange off the pieces. King d3, f5. And he plays his knight back. Maybe wanting to start to push the queenside pawns with b4, a4. Gukesh has 10 seconds. He goes g5, b4 is played. Black is still winning, but it's not easy. f4 played. And look at Arjun's pawns. They seem much more flexible and free to move. b5, he goes rook c7. Now knight b4, coming into c6. He plays it. Beautiful chess there. Rook c1 and takes. He takes with the g pawn. Now Gukesh also has a passer, but the b pawn is tremendously strong. Now the a pawn is joining in. These pawns are queening. Rook a1, trying to stop the pawns. Bishop f2 would be very powerful, but he goes knight c6. Rook check. King goes back. Bring the king closer. No, he pushes his e-pawn. Bishop comes to b4, attacking the knight. Now the knight jumps back, but can he push his b-pawn? Yes, he does. King comes up, but makes a queen. He takes back from a completely winning position. Now it's equal. He attacks this. The bishop and the knight. Knight a6, the only move. Arjun finds it. Now king attacks here. Bishop goes back. Pawn coming to e3. Which pawn is stronger? King d3. Oh my goodness. Is the e-pawn stronger or the a-pawn? Knight d5 attacking here. And Arjun is happy with a draw. For sure. Gukesh wants to win. And look at Gukesh there. He's like, what kind of resistance is this, Arjun? Down to 1 second. Oh, finds king e5. a6. He goes rook b3. And now knight b5 is winning. But he pushes a7. Rook comes back. And just rook a2. This is drawn now. But first bishop b4, threatening knight a3. You have to go back rook a6. But he goes king e4. And now knight c3 check would win the rook. But he goes knight a3. There's a check, check, check and a draw. But instead he goes king d3. Makes a queen because check would be met with bishop e1. And Gukesh resigns. What a game that was. Arjun was completely lost. But with this he takes 4 points lead, which will be not possible for Gukesh to cover up with the remaining time. And I think Arjun, with a smile on the face, he knows he's taken this match. For Gukesh to win this match is close to impossible now, because there is not enough time to cover the 4-point deficit. But he definitely would want to pull one bullet game back against Arjun. Arjun has scored 3.5 points in this format already. And game opens with 1 e4. We have the French defense on the board. Knight c3, knight f6, e5, and the main move is knight d7. But Arjun goes knight e4, which is kind of a dubious line. But for bullet, it should be completely fine. b6 play. Gukesh puts his bishop there. He looks very calm now, because now he has nothing much to lose. He castles. And Arjun, of course, would want to continue his dominance in this format. Queen comes into h4. And you can see Gukesh very calmly playing queen d2. Maybe some ideas to trap the queen here. Bishop comes to e7. And he plays his knight to c3. The e4 pawn is currently well defended, but white has very strong center control. Arjun long castles. Now, how dangerous is this? Knight e5 was a threat, taking advantage of the spin, so he goes bishop f4. But now g5, you can start rolling your pawns. g5 played, bishop comes back, queen to g4. Maybe knight d1 to e3 is a very good maneuver here, but black has the ideas of h5, h4. So Gukesh should remain very careful here. 44 seconds for both players. Gukesh may be wanting to bring his bishop back to e2, but then the queen would go back. Yes, queen f5, and he pushes f3. This is a very good move, because if you take, I'll take back with the bishop, exchanging an important defender and opening up the f file towards the f pawn. So f3, very, very powerful move, making Arjun think this is a difficult moment for Arjun. He has to perhaps give up a pawn, and he finds the best move, h5, giving up a pawn, bringing his queen back. Now he would want to use his kingside pawns here. h3 might be the best move, but it's so difficult to play these moves with the pawns rolling. So he goes queen e3, h4, bishop comes back, g4. Very, very powerful pawns here. Rook will come to g8, threatening g3, then h3. Wow, Gukesh in trouble. Although he's a pawn up, he goes queen f4. Maybe wanting to go bishop e3 and putting pressure on f7. g3, fantastic move. And now take on h2, followed by rook g8, h3. These are very, very good moves here for Arjun, but he goes h3, which is also not at all bad. Will Gukesh now take on g3 with his queen? Maybe, but then there is hg2 opening up the king, so he takes here. And now rook dg8, an important move to be played, just bringing his rook in. But Arjun tries to double on the h file. Do you want to trade queens? No, he goes, takes on h3, king comes up, attacking the rook, an important move here. And he brings this rook in, threatening rook h2. Gukesh says, I want to trade pieces, because if you count the number of pawns, Gukesh is 2 pawns up. But now there's a lot of pressure down the h file. Queen takes h3, king f2. If check, you can go king e1 to d2. Plays f6. And Gukesh takes it. Knight takes f6. And he's trying to run away with the king. But rook f8. There was also a possibility to give a check first. But rook f8, queen h4, queen g2, keep the queens. No, he trades. I think once the queens are traded, this is a difficult position now, because pieces are getting traded. h4 is hanging, so he saves it. Material is even, but the quality of the pawns is clearly in white's favor. Look at this h passer. It's so strong. And this time, I think Gukesh has a simplified position. He finds a very good move, trading the bishops. Takes, king takes. Now the king is coming up. The h pawn is very strong. This is just winning. This is winning for Gukesh. Rook c1, very nice move, attacking c7. Rook c8, Arjun under pressure. What to do? He goes c6, there's b5. And this one seems to be going Gukesh's way. Just when he seems to have given up all the pressure of winning and all, Gukesh is now totally winning. King g6, rook to c6, attacking e6 pawn, and takes on e6. King goes back. The white king comes up, and now the h pawn is ready to queen. King g7, he brings his rook here. If king h8, there is check. Rook d7 makes a queen, and Arjun resigns. Gukesh gets his first bullet win. A bit too late for the match, but nonetheless a nice consolation victory. We move to the last bullet game with the score standing 15.5, 12.5 in Arjun's favor. The final game of the death match 2.0. Arjun Erigaisi on 15.5, Gukesh on 12.5, opens with e4, e5, knight comes to f3, We have the Italian on the board. Bishop c5 by Gukesh. c3 played. Knight comes out. d3. Of course, Arjun would want to finish this with a win for himself, although he's already won the match, and Gukesh would love to score one more win here to end it on a high note for himself. If you see, Gukesh hasn't castled his king and goes for g5. This is a very risky way to play because he has weakened the f5 square. Arjun goes bishop b5. The bishop drops back to b6, and now the pawn moves to the center. Bishop comes back, the knight jumps in, looking at d5 and f5. Black is already in some big trouble here, right out of the opening. How is Gukesh going to deal with all of this pressure? Should he short castle? But then the knight is anyway jumping to d5, and after knight takes, pawn takes, the knight on c6 is hanging. He castles here. And now Arjun, he also jumps knight d5, takes, pawn takes. The knight goes back, but look at this pressure down to the e file. Takes on e5, bishop b5 played. He takes back. Well, if you take back on e5, rook takes e5 is hanging. So knight d7, he pushes his pawn. White is a pawn up. Black king is weak. This is already game over. Bishop e3, good move, trading off the bishops. Arjun has a completely dominant position. Takes, rook takes e3. And now Gukesh, I guess he has to keep fighting, but the position is so tough. Knight d4, what a move. Knight is coming to f5. Knight is coming to c6. Black's position is filled with holes everywhere. fe6, the pawn takes, so that after knight f5 or knight c6 you can push the pawn forward. Rook comes in, and Arjun now deciding where to go with his knight. He first plays queen e2, queen goes to h7, and c4 played. Arjun has more time on the clock, a better position on the board. Gukesh somehow just trying to hang in there. Triples the pieces down the e file. Rook e7, knight comes to c6, he goes back. Pawn to e7, attacking the rook. The rook comes up, he joins in with the rook. Queen f5 and h3. g4 is a big idea here in the position. He goes king at 7. And now knight d4, the queen is under big problems. He goes queen e3. Knight to d7, now knight d4 traps the queen. The queen doesn't really have a good square to go, but knight d8 played. He goes rook g7, he comes back, but that's a mistake because suddenly the rook is trapped. Oh my god, what a turnaround. Knight d4, he goes queen f7, attacking the rook. And now the rook does not have any space to go to, so they trade. And all of a sudden, it's actually Gukesh who has a better position now. It's around equal, but wow, from where have we reached where? King f2, you don't want to go rook e6 because of check. So rook f6, pawn to h4. And now rook f4, nice little move. He must give a check here. That seems like the normal way. King g7, take on f4 and play knight e6, attacking the pawns here. But he takes on g5. This allows the trade of rooks. Takes back. And now Arjun is completely lost because the rook is much superior to the knight. Pushes e5, take. King comes up and the rook jumps in. King f3, he gives a check, and Arjun resigns there. Gukesh ends with a win. The score is 15.5, 13.5, and Arjun is the winner of Deathmatch 2.0. Gukesh congratulates him. It was a tough fought match until the blitz section. Gukesh was also leading at some point, but then Arjun won the final blitz game and scored multiple wins in the bullet format. He was the superior player in bullet, but kudos to Gukesh for continuing to fight and in the end also winning two bullet games. He's truly a big fighter. Congratulations to both these youngsters for some phenomenal chess. See you all for Deathmatch 3.0 very soon.